All right, well, let's talk about the NBA Cup. Did you watch the Mavs Thunder game in the semifinals, the West semis?
No. I am like
Okay,
so
so
over the NBA Cup, let me tell you, but whatever.
I mean, it's just like, did you watch the Mavs Thunder game
Yeah.
from that day or whatever?
Yeah.
So my takeaway from that game, so PJ Washington didn't play, is that he's really important for the Mavs in that matchup because they just don't look at all like a team that they should be constructed to be even without PJ Washington versus the Thunder that is like big, physical, bullies. Because like OKC out rebounded them in that game. Either Daniel Gafford or Derek Lively was on the floor at all points during that game. And Kenrich Williams coming off the bench for OKC was still a plus 17. And the Thunder like killed them on the glass. They killed them with the turnovers, of course, because that's what OKC does. But it was like that's all they did, and they just like soundly like destroyed Dallas. And Lou Dort like locked up Luca in a way I didn't really expect because we talked about this during the playoffs. How I thought OKC was doing a really good job keeping Luca bottled up in the first half of that series, but then he started to figure some things out, and then he just looked like best player on the floor for the last two games because he was getting to his comfortable shots, super efficient, hitting his three, like all the, and then like in this game, like Lou George just completely shut him down.
Yeah, that's
Um,
crazy to hear about. I mean, Luca had
yeah,
such a size advantage versus
yeah,
them in the playoffs and was
yeah.
like using his body
Dort
to,
was the only person who could be on him, and by the end of the series, it was not even that.
yeah.
Dort was still like annoying, but like Luca was like pretty easily getting him into foul trouble, and also still able to like get to his spot even with Dort on him. And then everyone else, he was just straight up bullying. So I was really surprised to see his overall performance in this game. Like, really poor shooting game, really like tough decision making with like all of the turnovers that
Hmm.
OKC was able to force and all of that. But it was like, oh, well, this is the formula. Like, OKC could walk away from that game feeling pretty good about themselves, before the actual NBA Cup final. But let's talk about the game that you actually watched of
Yeah.
these two. The Bucks Thunder NBA Cup Finals. So the Bucks ended up in the finals after defeating the Atlanta Hawks in the Eastern semis in a pretty like that was a pretty grimy game. I assume you didn't watch that, but
Yeah,
I did. It was pretty
but the
like back
Hawks
and
beat the
forth
Knicks. That
grimy.
was surprising me.
Yeah, they did a good job defending the Knicks overall, but the Knicks were also like missing a ton of shots. Mikal Bridges is a problem for that team right now. But yeah, so the Bucks make it to the final, and we've got this pretty heavyweight matchup between like Giannis and the Bucks, who have been not. I still don't like. We talked before the game, and I said like the Bucks, they've been on a winning streak, but I don't think that they're actually that good. In part because I think their offense is not as good as it needs to be for what the defense is going to be just by virtue of your Dame, Gary Trent Jr. backcourt. And in this game, they just like took everything that I said about them and like told me to shove it because they had this just dominant defensive game against OKC.
Why do you think that they struggled so much with? I mean, I know Giannis is a top three player in the league, if not some people are debating the best in the league, whatever. But he's a defensive menace. He's athletic. He can
Yeah.
protect the rim. They got Brook Lopez. I know, like with the Mavs Thunder, that's still like a weakness of the Thunder. Their ability to attack like post defenders on offense specifically, and they very much struggled with it with the Bucks.
Their
Um,
ability to attack post defenders. What do you mean by that?
they can't attack a Giannis and a Brook Lopez in the paint as easily. Like those shots are going to be heavily
Yeah.
contested, and they were
Heavily, right? Like
terrible.
they don't even have to be that close to you, but they're 7 feet tall.
And their numbers in the paint on offense was awful. Like it was 7 for 30 something, or was 7 for 20 something.
Jeez, that's what it
Really
looks like,
bad.
to be honest. I think that the Thunder had like an 83 offensive rating in this game.
We wondered about that just because they're more spread offense. With Chet, he wasn't playing in this game, so you got Isiah Heartenstein, who I thought was the
Yeah.
biggest like takeaway from the game on offense and defense in terms of just like I have questions about how he's going to fit on both sides and how they're going to utilize him, which I think they can do better at, and they just didn't do it very well in this game.
Yeah. No, I agree with that. I think that you saw some of the limitations of like there were a lot of like there's a lot of good that Hartenstein brings, and I don't think that he limits their offense. I just think he doesn't fix the problems that they have, if that makes sense. One of the things that he allows, if they choose to use him this way, is he can be this hub and allow a lot of OKC like Shea and everyone else to operate off ball. He can hit cutters. Like he was making some really like smart passes in this game. The Bucks would like rotate, like especially Giannis was like rotating back in the paint so fast that it didn't matter. And is like, okay, that layup it's now heavily contested, and you need to like reset your entire possession now. So some of that stuff was just kind of rendered moot, and then it's like, okay, well, Hartenstein has to score now just because of how the Bucks were playing him. They'd drop way back and then come up and contest his floater. And I noticed this during the Knicks series against the Sixers. If Hartenstein's floater is even semi-contested, like he rushes that shot so much that it looks totally, well, it already kind of looks like a wild shot, but when it's wide open, he makes it. When it's not open and he rushes it, like it misses badly, right? Even when he's close. And so I think that he was kind of like spooked by like the timing of those contests. So that was some of it. But I mean, the biggest issue in this game is that Shea is their only reliable creator, and the Bucks were able to shut him down. And when they were able to do that, J-Dub was not able to like really take advantage of. One of the things that really impressed me in this game was just like Dame and Gary Trent Jr. and AJ Green were able to shut down all of OKC's perimeter guys. Like none of them were comfortable on ball, especially on ball, off ball, less so, but they don't like a lot of what they do is on ball. Like OKC is one of the highest isolation rates in the league. I think they're only 17th in assist ratio. So it's not that they don't move the ball a lot, like they do, but they rely so much on that one-on-one shot creation by Shea and by J-Dub to a lesser degree. And when that's not happening and Shea isn't like drawing three guys on him because he can't miss, it's harder to move the ball around. I think they ended this game with only like 8 assists or something. Like it was a really rough overall offensive game for the Thunder, and all stemmed from the fact that so much of what they rely on is this one-on-one creation.
That taps into the idea that the Thunder are still young, still
the Thunder had 13 assists in this game. 13 assists to 10 turnovers.
But I think that plays into what you're saying, where they're not passing the ball, and the shots that they're deciding to take, settling, if you want to use that word, and not kicking out or, trying to get or working harder or making an extra pass to get the better look is just something they're going to have to work on. Yeah, they were just settling shots in the paint that were contested, and that's not a good time to do that against the Bucks, because they got dudes who can contest that. They have size. They're way bigger than the Thunder. They need to work on like getting it out to the perimeter and getting guys more shots, even if they're missing, which they were. Just not enough opportunities for them to really start hitting those open looks and to like spread the Bucks a little bit more. Because Shea was not a good shooting night for Shea, but they're loading up on him. Just like the Thunder were loading up on Giannis, but Giannis was just passing it to dudes, and they were hitting them off the help.
Well, the difference is that you'd have like 3 or 4 guys on Giannis in the paint. Shea was maybe drawing 2. Sometimes like he doesn't have quite the passing vision, and you wouldn't necessarily expect it because he is shorter than Giannis. There's like the literal passing vision. But that is something that he needs to grow in, right? Like Shea is not nearly the playmaker that even Giannis is, but some of the the guys that he's in the running with the MVP race against Jokic, against Luka, he's not. Part of that is that, and Giannis has sort of developed it a lot more recently. It's a lot different when you're creating with the intention of getting a shot for somebody else versus creating for yourself. One of the things that I was really curious if we'd see by this point in the season, honestly, with Isiah Heartenstein, back from his early season injury, is whether we just see more of SGA running pick and roll with him. Because we saw at the end of the Mavs series that OKC's offense was really unlocked when they ran pick and roll with Chet or ran with Chet in the dunker spot as opposed to operating more on the perimeter, because he actually is a vertical spacing threat, unlike the other guys that they like to put in the dunker spot, which means it's a little bit harder for whoever the help defender or the often the big is on that guy to step up to help contest Shea's shot in the mid range. They're just not really running a lot of that. That's kind of the counter to what I talked about earlier, or the another thing that they could do with iHeart, as opposed to running him kind of operating as a hub on the perimeter more. They could have him more directly involved in the action inside. But I think they're so kind of married to their current spacing principles that running that at a heavy dose doesn't really make a lot of sense for them. Shea also rejects a ton of screens as opposed to using the screens in pick and roll. And so the big often just ends up on the perimeter because that's what you should do, that you should stay out there when Shea's rejecting the screen to create the most space for him. But I thought that Andre Jackson Jr., who was the primary defender on him in this game, just did a really good job chasing him under and around screens and just like able to stay attached without falling behind SGA. And like the reason that he was able to do that is because SGA wasn't hitting his threes, and he's been hitting his threes as kind of like a league average clip this season. He's been taking more pull-up threes, so that's kind of impressive, but he wasn't hitting his threes at all in this game, and so Ajax was able to go under every single screen. He also doesn't have the quickest release, and he's often kind of trying to use a three as a threat to drive. But when you don't bite on it, you have time to recover without kind of giving up the drive, because he's not always like ready to shoot it like kind of right away.
Yeah.
Sort of similar to Jamal, even though I think SGA is like better about about taking his threes and whatever. But a similar issue that like we've had with Jamal in that sense is like you're kind of pump faking the three instead of like actually trying to go for it. And so the defender is able to recover and kind of read you in that way.
I also wonder about the pick and roll with SGA and Heartenstein, because he's not a popping big like Chet is, and he was hurt at the beginning of the season. The SGA is not used to playing with him, not a lot of reps.
Well, yeah, because it's not really like it's not really like a staple of their offense over the last few years, because they didn't have Chet one year, and then last year they just had Chet like popping a lot. And then at the end of the Mavs series, they started to run some pick and roll, started to run with some Chet in the dunker spot. But Shea doesn't really like operate with like a traditional big in that way.
But I think like some people are going to question, this is the same question as last year. They were good, but we were, solving problems in the playoffs and winning series after series is a grueling thing that teams need experience. And Mark needs to learn, the coach, Mark Dagnall, needs to learn how to utilize Isiah Heartenstein better on offense and defense, because he wasn't even guarding Giannis in the post sometimes. He was getting out onto the perimeter guarding guys, which was crazy in that context. And then they're settling for so much shit in the paint against a like kind of dominant defense when you have Damian Lillard on the perimeter that you could try to like, match up Hunter.
Well, I mean, the reason that Dame is such an issue on the perimeter defensively is because you can blow by him and get into the paint. It's not like he can't contest on the perimeter. Right. So I don't think that that's necessarily
it goes hand in hand.
The issue. I heard like Jason Timpf had a similar take, and he said that they had the same issue in the Mavs series. I think I completely disagree, to be honest. The reason that I said that they didn't address their main issue offensively this season and created a new one by getting rid of Giddey, which I'm not saying is the wrong move, but they left another vacuum there in terms of on-ball creation that could spell Shea and create some easier shots for him. It's not that Giddey it's not that the offense was necessarily better with Giddey on the floor, but getting Shea going with easier shots so that he doesn't only have to create all this tough off the dribble stuff, definitely an issue. J-Dub is just not there at this point. It might end up being the case by the end of the season, but he's not there at this point as a secondary shot creator in terms of being like a championship level second option. And we saw that in this game. Bucks were doing a really good job throughout the night, forcing him to his right hand, which he did work on this summer, but it is still his weaker side. And he settled a lot he really likes to get to that mid-range is the other thing. So he might be hitting those shots, and he hits a lot of them, especially in fourth quarters, even though he wasn't hitting them in the fourth quarter in this game. This is my thing with OKC's offense is you look at their shot diet, both last year and this year, it's not really conducive to even a top 10 offense, even though they're top 10 in both last year and they've recently moved up into the top 10 this year. But it's not conducive to a top 10 offense. It's just that they're incredibly efficient on the shots that they're making. So Shea is like hitting all his middies, J-Dub's hitting all his middies, and they hit a lot of their threes. And they make their rim shots too, but they don't generate a lot of shots at the rim. They also don't generate a lot of threes. They actually take a lot more mid-range shots than you'd think. They're taking more threes this year, though, to be fair. I think that their problem that was revealed in the Mavs series is that they need somebody on that team who's able to hit those tough contested shots in the paint. I said they need an athletic slasher. I thought J-Dub would kind of transform into this guy because he does this sometimes, but he loves the mid-range so much and he doesn't get to, I think he can hit those shots when he does get to the rim, but he's not really looking. He's looking to generate the jump shot more. I don't even think that's necessarily bad. This kid is a third-year player now, right? Like I'm not gonna critique his shot diet, especially with how efficient he is on those shots. If he did change his shot diet, he would fill a considerable need for this team. Mm-hmm. And it would also create more playmaking opportunities for him, because if he's getting to somewhere that isn't just the mid-range, he can force, more collapsing in the paint, kick out, or shovel passes to dump off to the big or what have you. I have more issues or more concerns about his handle also, but just I don't think that he's like quite there yet overall as a secondary shot creator, just because of just kind of the overall limitation on that skill set. And part of it is the shot diet. And it's not just J-Dub, it's really the whole team.
They're still developing for as good as they are, and we don't necessarily know how J-Dub, for example, like you're talking about, is going to develop in these manners. And if he can put that into his game, then the offense as a whole is going to know more how to utilize them to solve certain problems. And just right now they're kind of figuring that out, especially in like a more competitive game in this NBA Cup final against a team with the Bucks, who obviously are way more comfortable in what they want to do, because Giannis has been on the team for forever, and a lot of these pieces have as well. Even though Dame's somewhat new, he's a vet. He knows how to like solve problems. So it's just like it was an interesting comparison.
And he's a point guard is the other thing. Like Shea is the point guard of this team, but he's more of a shooting guard. He's he's one of those like trying to reclaim the glory of the combo guard guys that's going through this transformation of like, now that I'm the primary on this team, I'm not just concerned with getting my own shot. I'm concerned with getting other guys' shots. But part of that is also understanding like shot diet. And that's the difference. Yeah. Like I really think that's such a crucial difference in the kind of development of traditional point guards compared to combo guards that might like play some point at some point in their careers, either early or once they get to the NBA or what have you. Being concerned with like getting guys in the spots that work for them, and also knowing how important the overall shot diet of the team is. That's why, like, you look at a guy like Mike Conley, you look at a guy like even Tyus Jones, even Russell Westbrook, and we talked about this over the summer, the importance of playing with pace and it's not just about like, Steve Nash was, renowned for this, like legendary for it, created like some of the best offenses of all time just by playing with pace. And it wasn't just about like you getting down the floor quickly, but the ball getting down the floor quickly. And I'm not even saying that the Thunder don't do this, but I'm just pointing to it as an example of one thing that is always on the mind of one of these like table setter point guards, unless you're like a Chris Paul type who's like the getting everybody in their spots guy. Like there's different ways to create baseline efficiency for your team, but it's more about creating baseline efficiency for your team and not just creating like efficient shots for you and like thinking on like a one possession at a time like basis. And I think that is the difference between traditional point guards and some of these guys. And, traditional point guards have their limitations as well. They're not often like star scorers. Ja Morant is like an anomaly. We've seen Trey Young take a serious step back with his scoring this season. It's difficult to do both, right? Mm-hmm. That's what we see. And I think that that's just, an appreciation for the other side of that equation is one of my takeaways from this game. Last thing that I just wanted to say about this, same takeaway that I had after the Mavs series is I was wrong 95% of the way when it comes to OKC's defense. It is playoff ready, even though I think there are certain things that do present issues for them. I think Jokic is an issue for them. I think Giannis is an issue for them for sure. If they ever met up with like Philly in the finals, I think that Embiid would be an issue for them. It's their offense that concerns me more. And it's like, like you and I both talked about, just the recurring issues with just, I think it's more like roster than scheme. Like drive and kick can get you pretty far, but I think they don't actually have the optimal personnel for it around Shea to keep up a high level drive and kick offense against a playoff level defense. And that's what happens when you have such a tiny team.
They're just not going to enough, and I don't even know that they can execute it well enough at a high level yet.
It's a really hard style to keep up for 48 minutes as your bread and butter.
Yeah, and on their defense, I agree with you. They have a very good defense. I think if I had to pick,
they had a 102 defensive rating in this game. The problem was they had an 83 offensive rating.
But yeah, I think the perimeter defense and like speed is a very strong point in regards to their defense. And they're, it's not like they're horrible in the paint, but it's not as strong as the perimeter. And guarding the perimeter is super valuable in the NBA right now, which is why I think their defense was so incredibly amazing.
They also have like the highest turnover or their steal rate, I guess, in NBA history. So that definitely helps.
Yeah, you got to not turn the ball over against them. Listeners, thank you so much for spending the time and hanging out with us. If you haven't subscribed and you're watching this and you liked what you saw, please consider hitting the like button and subscribing so you don't miss future shows. And the Clip channel where we'll upload clips and snippets from the show. Remember, winning is fun and losing always sucks.
Sure does. But winning is awesome.